She allegedly told her children they were in for a special night, a sleepover in the car, complete with popcorn. But prosecutors say something far more sinister was allegedly unfolding in the mind of their mom. And now this mom is accused of taking extreme steps to allegedly poison her three children. She often spoke about how much she loved being a mom, but investigators say a darker story was hiding in plain sight.
She researched what happens if you sit in exhaust for a period of time.
What police who are investigating this case just told us about a potential motive. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. This is a really, really tough story, especially when you look at the social media that we found for the defendant in this case, a mom who the day before she allegedly tried to take the lives of her three children by poisoning them with carbon monoxide. She shared a post about how someone can feel unwanted in their marriage or relationship by their partner. Chardonnay Marie Benavidez, she posted a lot on social media, and she did post about having challenges in her life, the struggle of mental health, the struggle of relationship. She was divorced, which we will talk about here in just a moment. She also talked a lot about how much she loved her children and how much she loved being a mom. And it makes what she is accused of doing very difficult to comprehend, especially when you see a video like this one of her and her three children at home. She has twin 2-year-olds and a 4-year-old, all boys. And she often talked about in her post that she was a boy mom and proud of it. Now, the caption of this video was, quote, "The best thing about me is these three. I'm so lucky to have been chosen to be their mama." She posted that on April 27th. Now, before I get to, frankly, the horror of what police say they found on June 6th inside her house, I need you to understand who this mom is and just how it appears no one had any idea that she could turn into, allegedly, an attempted killer and now a defendant facing incredibly serious charges. I want you to look at this video from late May. This is a montage of her and her three children. Again, Chardonnay's divorced. Local media in Oregon, where this took place outside of Portland, is reporting that she became divorced in 2024 and she had sole custody of those three children. Her husband is responding to what she's now accused of. We'll get to what he had to say in just a moment. Now, when you look at this video, the caption, being a mom, it means being strong when you feel weak, giving love, even when you're running on empty, and waking up each day to keep going for the ones you love most, end quote. Now, it appears that Chardonnay, she was struggling, and being a single mom to three boys, 4 and 2 years old, that is a lot. But again, for as much as it appeared that she may have been struggling, the issues that she may have been having in her personal life, no one appears to have known that something like this could potentially happen. Prosecutors say it was just days after that post that she started to come up with a plan to allegedly take the lives of those three boys.
So it's our understanding that she used Google or some type of search engine to research suicide that did not incur pain, per se, something that would allow them to just peacefully fall asleep and never wake up.
I spoke with Lieutenant Trevor Wenning of the Kaiser, Oregon Police Department who are investigating this case. This is dispatch audio per KGW television of the call to respond to Chardonnay's home on June 6th. It was around 8:20 at night when she was the one who called 911, telling police that something had gone terribly wrong. And she was allegedly upfront about what had happened. Prosecutors say that Chardonnay's children were going in and out of consciousness when they found them. She allegedly said that she tried to kill her kids and herself, and she decided to do it, allegedly using carbon monoxide.
I don't think she understood the fact that a lot of those types of accidental carbon monoxide poisoning happens when you're intoxicated, you're at the bar, you want to stay warm, you don't want to drive, you don't want to get arrested, or you're camping and it gets too cold, you jump in your car and you have that exhaust leak. I don't know that she put a lot of thought into whether or not the effects of the actual physical exhaust and what that's going to entail versus the actual odorless, colorless gas that is associated with burning those fossil fuels.
Now, police say when they arrived, they actually couldn't enter the house because of concerns about the carbon monoxide that was potentially in the air. So they had to call the fire department to make entry into this home, to ventilate the home, to make sure it was safe to go inside. And when they got inside, they found those 3 children on the living room floor. Those 3 kids were rushed to the hospital to be treated for CO poisoning. And we are happy to report, and if there's any good news in this story, it is that those 3 boys are okay. Chardonnay, she was also taken to the hospital for treatment, and now she is in the local jail facing incredibly serious charges. When police searched her house, they also found an alleged apparatus. And it was some sort of apparatus that connected the exhaust pipe of a vehicle in an attached garage to the inside of the car.
And so she researched that. She jumped on Amazon, purchased some items to connect to her car. And we did find, in fact, an apparatus that was attached to her exhaust pipe that led a tube into the interior of the vehicle, which then, again, she told the kids that they were going to have a sleepover, jumped in the car. We're not sure exactly how long they were in the car before she turned it on. And we're not sure how long she stayed in the car after. She claims that she started feeling those effects after that first 5 minutes.
The next part of this story, and all of it is so emotional and difficult, but this part really hit me in the heart.
So the mother had pre-planned this within the preceding week. They were going to have a what she called a sleepover event or party in the car. So she and her 3 boys, 2 were age 2, they're twins, and a 4-year-old boy went into the car. We don't know exactly how long they were in the car before she turned the vehicle system on, but then we did find baby wipes and popcorn and items inside the car, which corresponded with her story that she was going to have a sleepover, and that was her way of getting the children into the car initially. So they were initially in the home, then in the car, and then when they started to panic, she brought the children back in and called 911.
Chardonnay allegedly told the children that they were going to sleep in the car, and it was going to be this special night, a sleepover. It included popcorn. And you just think of those boys, they trusted their mom, but she actually had a plan to allegedly take their lives. They were all allegedly in that vehicle for about 20 minutes, she said. Now, not only is that apparatus connecting the exhaust pipe to the inside of the vehicle an incredibly damning piece of evidence that this was premeditated, Chardonnay allegedly also told police that this was not a spur-of-the-moment plan. She made some very shocking admissions, allegedly, to law enforcement. More dispatch audio here from KGW of that response. Chardonnay reportedly said that she had been planning this for roughly a week. So as you see those posts on social media about her life and the challenges in her life and even what she loved about being a mom and the love that she had for her kids, for the last week, she had a plan in place to allegedly do this. She also allegedly considered multiple options, and police noted that there was a gun that was found in the car where the kids were allegedly exposed to CO. And prosecutors say that Chardonnay said that she was planning to use that gun on herself after her kids passed away if this plan had gone through to the end.
I can't answer the why, because that's something that's going to have to come from her ultimately in her own hindsight and thinking back and reflecting. She did tell officers and investigators that she was not happy with her life and that she didn't want to leave the children to the father because she was displeased with him, didn't feel that he deserved to have the children, didn't feel that he would take care of them. She didn't give any specifics, but said that he had placed them in dangerous situations in the past, whatever that means. So she was not happy with his parenting style, and ultimately she wasn't happy with her life and wasn't going to allow him to have the kids. And so, that's what we know at this point. Whether that was her true motive, whatever, we just don't know that. That's a question that's going to have to be asked of her down the road.
But again, those kids survived. And Chardonnay's ex-husband now has the children, and he gave an interview to local Portland television station KOIN. And even though, look, a divorce can be brutal, it's often brutal. It doesn't appear that he anticipated anything like this could happen. This is what he told the TV station. A very blunt comment, quote, "She was such a great bleeping mother." I went to the hospital. They wouldn't let me in. They wouldn't give me no information. I ended up getting detained because I was like, dude, those are my kids back there. I'm bleeping going in. He said that Chardonnay had tried to harm herself in the past, but he didn't think that the kids could ever allegedly be involved in something like this. He also said that she did make comments about hurting herself in the past too, but to that he said, quote, she said it a few times, but I mean, we all do. Now, we're going to talk more about the case now against Chardonnay in a moment, but there's also another major red flag that this dad apparently discovered when he went to her home. The dad went to Chardonnay's house to get the children clothes, but when he got there, everything was gone, according to KOIN.
Yeah, a lot of the belongings were either sold or given away to family members or friends in anticipation of her not needing those physical items in the future. And so, yes, I can confirm that the house was fairly bare.
He said, quote, the house was stripped. She donated everything. Chardonnay is now facing 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder. Now, again, those kids are okay. Their dad says they don't really understand what's going on. I mean, they're 4 and 2 years old. But this is video of Chardonnay making her first court appearance. She put her head in her hands. She certainly looked distraught as cameras captured her as a defendant for the first time. She stood behind glass. She listened to the judge. And this is part of what the prosecutor told the court per KGW.
Once the kids started to show some distress, she tried to calm them. She couldn't calm them. She took them back inside.
Chardonnay is now being held without bond. KGW says that a grand jury will look at the case next week, and she is next due in court on June 17th.
One thing that I don't know that we didn't ask her, and we may not get an opportunity to ask her, we understand that she was seeing counselors for depression. But when people have suicidal thoughts or are in crisis, there is a nationwide number. It's 988. It's the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline number. It's a free service. You talk to trained counselors. They help you walk through your feelings. They offer emotional support. They try to navigate what you're going through. And, with the whole intent of not hoping to get you to change your mind on that suicidal ideation. And so that's the one thing that I really want to push is that there are services out there. She was seeking and seeing a counselor, but you just never know talking to a person in the moment whether that's going to change their actions.
Join us now to talk about this case, where it could go next, is family law attorney Randy Kessler. It's always great to have you here on Law and Crime, even though I know these stories are just very difficult to talk about. And before we get to the family law side of it, which is the world you live in, and it appears that there was some custody arrangements that were in place, clearly there's some mental health issues going on with this woman. But then at the same time, I think about how allegedly premeditated all of this was. You had this apparatus from the exhaust pipe to the car, and then you also had her allegedly telling police that she had planned it. And maybe search history online will show that she was researching this for about a week. How does the potential mental health issues that she has kind of factor into how this case could be prosecuted, knowing that at this point it appears to be allegedly very premeditated?
Right. I think you have the elements of murder. Right? You have premeditation. She took some steps to plan it. It wasn't spur of the moment. There wasn't anything that provoked her. So certainly the legal basis for proving a murder case are there. So the prosecution has to worry that the defense is going to try to create some sympathy with the jury. There's definitely a mental health component of it. Everyone sees that, clear as can be. So proving that she did it when she basically confessed to it, planned it, and the victims are so innocent, those are all the things the state has. What the defense has is she's got to have some mental illness, some mental health issues. I don't think it's a insanity defense, because she certainly seemed to know what she was doing. She planned it. She told the kids that we're going to have a sleepover. So the only thing that she really has going for her is what we have in a lot of the cases that we see, Chris, which is, who can believe that a mom would really do this to her children? But this isn't one where the evidence is unclear or fuzzy, or you can't see what happened. She did this. It's going to sort of be like some similar cases that are in the news, where the focus for the defense lawyers is going to be on the sentencing more than on the conviction, because she's getting convicted. The question is, can they get a good plea for her? Can they get her into a treatment facility to avoid jail for a while? What can they do? Because if she goes to court on a trial for murder, it's a guilty.
Yeah, and I think too, she was the one who called 911 as well, and then the kids were brought to the hospital and they'll be okay. So there's that part of it. But at the same time, it already got to the point where these kids were in the car. I mean, it's such a tragic situation. From the family law component part of it, the kids are now with their father. She apparently had, this is just according to media reports, we're still working on getting the documents. She had sole custody of these kids, and it seemed like there was nothing that made anybody believe that the kids would ever be in danger. She posted about loving the kids on social media, but the husband did tell a local television station that she had talked about harming herself in the past, never about the kids though. I don't know if any of that was reported, but in these types of situations, like what's the bar to revisit a custody arrangement if there is a concern about someone's mental health?
Well, let's go back to the original case. A lot of people are going to question, why did she get sole custody when she's obviously got something wrong? But like you said, Chris, even the husband said, former husband, even he said she was a great mom. He didn't foresee this. So if he didn't think she was a bad mom or had concerns, he was the one who would have been the one to raise it with the court, in their divorce, in their custody decision, in their custody trials. So it's hard to look back at what the judge might have done wrong or what the court system might have done wrong because nobody alerted the court, and maybe it just wasn't apparent. Going forward, there's no such thing as a slam dunk or a no-brainer absolute. This is pretty darn close. If he hired me and we walked into court, we'd say, Judge, we have an emergency custody situation. We want to skip to the front of the line because there are innocent children, and that's the most important ward of the state is to take care of children. And the judge would almost guaranteed absolutely sign an immediate order saying, till we can have a further hearing on this, because mom's in jail or being detained, Dad, you've got full custody. You make all the decisions. You have all the rights to put them in school, take them to the doctor. He's going to get immediate custody. They were released to him, which is just a logistical thing. Who gets to take the children away from, the hospital? He did that. That's like a temporary thing. And then he will get official recognition by the court. It's not a very high bar when someone's in jail, especially when they're in jail for this. Even if she was in jail for something she didn't do, like shoplifting, somebody's got to watch the kids. And next in line is the natural parent. That's just the way our legal system works.
Had there been a report, they get divorced, I think it was in 2024. And then let's just say he had brought to the court, and this is more like a hypothetical, but like she has sole custody and he raises a concern about someone's mental health. Obviously there are, contentious divorces where someone may claim something that isn't true. And then, the court has to take into, consideration that someone may just have an axe to grind with somebody. But in a case like this, where you have someone who apparently in the past talked about harming themselves, like how does the court typically approach that after a custody arrangement's been made, but before something that I don't think anybody could have foreseen happening, like this case? Like how does the court deal with that if the person who didn't have custody says, well, I think this person has some mental health issues?
Those are some of the most difficult cases for us divorce lawyers and custody lawyers because the courts are overwhelmed with problems that have already happened, like this one, where somebody's done something that's harmed a child and they're waiting in line for their day in court. And for me to say, Judge, my client wants to jump in front of the line because they're worried that something will happen to the children, it's just hard because the courts are overwhelmed. But it does happen. If people have money or if the government has resources, you can appoint a psychologist. We have a case that's going to trial in a few months where the psychologist recommended that one parent not have custody and the other parent be primarily charged. And then that parent refuses to pay for the psychologist. So we got to find money to get the psychologist to come to court. A whole bunch of logistical problems. And those are in cases where there's money and resources to get a private psychologist to weigh in. And even they're not perfect. But to answer your question succinctly, it's very, very hard to convince a judge to make a change preemptively because, someone who used to be married to her is now saying she's crazy. She's going to harm the children because, nobody really thinks that their ex is perfectly normal.
No, and I'm sure you even see that in cases that could be considered like an amicable, divorce. There's obviously still emotion on all sides of it. I think about the fact that she also like just mitigating factors as this goes forward, and when it comes to like plea negotiations, if it even gets there, and I know that's like we're a long ways away from that point, but she was the one who called 911. She realized that maybe what she was doing was wrong. But at the same time, these kids had to go to the hospital for CO poisoning, according to police. She's the one who had this premeditated, all these thoughts allegedly about having to go with this. For a week, she had this plan in place that it was going to go, and she almost went through with it. She could have gone through with it, and it ends up being a story where we're talking about, a horrific triple, if not quadruple, homicide or murder-suicide situation. Like, how far does the fact that she was the one that called 911 potentially go in plea negotiations?
It might help with plea negotiations. It shows some remorse, some awareness She's not a horrible person like some people who has no remorse that does this, but it doesn't get her very far. It may get her the possibility of parole, may get her some treatment. But what I think is interesting to me about that is then you've got to think about post-conviction on the civil side. And again, that's what I do a lot of is custody. Do the children ever get to see their mother? And there's this tension. On one hand, she did this. She forfeited the right to be involved in their lives. But that's their mother. And they're going to find some redeeming qualities. And they're going to grow up to be adults and say, half of me is her DNA. And there's something, I need to know her. I need to know who she was. And do we deprive them of knowing anything about her? So I think on the civil side, there's going to be some sort of custodial arrangement that allows her to have parenting time. Probably what the judge will do on the civil side is to say, it's up to dad. If dad talks to psychologists and decides it's good for the children to see their mom, he can bring them to visit them under supervised jailhouse conditions or however, or by FaceTime. But on the criminal side, her acknowledging that she did wrong, it gets the conviction. It may go to sentencing, but it doesn't get her off the hook. It doesn't lower the crime. It doesn't lower the charge. It's still murder, attempted murder.
And in cases, I mean, even cases where, and this is a more general question, like someone's accused of a violent crime like this one, on the civil side, have you seen where someone would be, even with their significant other or former significant other in prison, where they're required by the court to bring kids to visit that person who's in prison?
Yeah. In fact, there's a case, I think it was either Kentucky or Kansas years ago that we talked about a lot, where the child was a product of a rape, right? The father raped the mother. The father went to jail for the rape of the mother. And the father later on was entitled to visitation. Every case is unique. I don't know the details of it. Maybe mother was also had a whole bunch of issues with the child, or maybe it was the child's request to visit, to get to know her father. I'm sure it wasn't a loving, happy relationship. But yes, there's this tension in the law between, punishment, protecting children from abusers, and the right of children to know their parents, to be, involved with their legitimate parents, especially if there's no one else to step in. If there's somebody, a new spouse that will come in and adopt the children and take their place, that's one thing. But if children have, one parent that's not in jail, but still not a great situation, and another parent, what's best for those children? I mean, how do you know what's best for a child? Best for a child not to ever know who their parent was, or the best for a child to actually see and learn and understand? And I'm sure she has some love for the children. It sounds like from dad, she was a good mom and loved the children, and she had a snap, she had a break. And I'm sure through the children's lens, they're going to want to believe this was a one-off. This was a weird episode. There's a psychological issue, and this isn't really who she is. They're going to want to believe that. And maybe that's healthy for them to believe that as they grow up and become members of society. That's a whole, incredible psychology course that I'm sure psychologists are still, developing and wrestling with. How do you help kids get through something like this? Better to know the abuser or not? And I don't know where I come down.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's so many cases that we've talked about, and unfortunately, when we speak, it's family law like type situations and contentious marriages or divorces that have been going on, and like I feel like there's just a lot of times where like you just wonder like how could this have been prevented? But like in some ways, like if there were no red flags, you're kind of sitting there after the fact, and maybe there's red flags after the fact, but in the moment, I don't think anybody was anticipating that this woman would be in this situation. Accused of what she's accused of. Randy Kessler, family law attorney.
Right? We all think that moms, more than dads, would never do something like this. So there's this inherent bias that you don't see red flags. But yes, Chris, thank you for having me. This is another tough.
No, it's a good point. I'm actually happy you brought that up because you go through this woman's Facebook page, and social media only tells like part of the story, but like this is a woman who is dedicated to her kids, it appeared. Right. And there's no way, even through like a post, if she was talking about a relationship that went sour, that you would ever think that it would get to the point where the kids are in a car and she's allegedly trying to take their lives with CO poisoning. And I think that's hard. Do you see that bias? And I know like there's bias is tough. Like, the idea of, and we've seen a lot of cases. There's one in Massachusetts that we talked about that I'm covering with a mom who's going through a custody dispute and allegedly took her children's lives, tried to take her own life. But do you see like a bias sometimes, like between whether it's the mom or the dad in these situations? I'm happy you brought that up.
Yes, it's evaporated. It's gone away a lot. I mean, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when I started practicing, when I learned in law school, there was a tender years presumption that they presumed the mom was better for the children. Now, there are a lot of working moms sitting as judges that aren't the primary caregivers, so they understand that sometimes it's dad. So it's evolved a lot. But there's still, I talked to a politician and a high-ranking lobbyist yesterday about a bill they want to bring up in Georgia. There should be a presumption that everyone's equal and moms and dads are equal. And that's not even the official law. It's supposed to be gender neutral in most states, but we've got our biases. And I think a lot of people still think that in general, moms should be better, everything being equal. And really the only opinion that matters is whoever happens to be the judge that day. And, we don't know what judges think until we see them on the bench trying our case. And then they've already made the decision. So shortly to answer your question, yes, I see the bias. But I see it a lot less today than I saw it 30, 40 years ago. There are a lot of great dads out there, a lot of great. I also think this, Chris, you might find interesting. Cases where men get custody more often have to go to trial because I just think it's harder, in general, for a woman to agree not to have custody. There's a stigma. She's got to explain to her friends or family, why did she agree that she would be the secondary parent, even though it might be the best thing for the children. I think it's just still hard in today's world for mom to acknowledge that it's better for the children to live primarily with their father. So I do see that sort of a problem inherent in this. So, interesting stuff, interesting issues that, unfortunately, it's why I'm going to be in business, I think, for a while.
Yeah, no. And you just think of, a case like this and it's just, the children are so young, 4, and then twins that are 2 years old. Just an incredibly tragic situation. Randy Kessler, family law attorney. Thanks as always for being with us on Law and Crime. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Chardonnay Benavidez will next be in court June 17th, facing those 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we're also now streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.